Hi, Ramnaresh. Thank you very much for taking some time to talk to us. West Indies and England go head-to-head in three test matches in a biosecure environment, the first of which starts on July 8th. Now, I know you've been following the build-up from time to time. There have been two practice games. I just want to get your perspective on the series. I know it's quite different from what you would have been accustomed to in your playing days. The guys now are in a bubble, basically, and they're preparing for that test series. Your perspective of what you've been reading and your feedback from what's been happening in England. Your thoughts on West Indies' chances in the series.
I think obviously it possesses a different challenge. It's not the the normal situation where you're accustomed playing under. Obviously, due to the coronavirus and so forth, players are basically isolated from the rest of the world. So I think that in itself is going to possess a challenge in terms of the mental strength that players have. Especially when you're seeing each other every day, you're not able to go out and get food and those little stuff that you're accustomed doing that plays a major part, especially when you're under the stress of playing at the highest level. But I think sometimes when you're young, it's good, and because everything appears to be very, you do things very instinctively. So I'm hoping that the guys will be able to adjust to the sort of condition that they're playing it, not necessarily only the coronavirus challenge in terms of being indoors, but also the conditions with weather-wise, what England will possess to them. But I think the biggest challenge would be mental tests, like I've said before, because also when you're playing on the field, the weather tends to change. You can probably get 3 or 4 different weather scenarios during the one day.
Right.
So I think that itself is going to produce a challenge, and it's all about how they could basically adopt it mentally. Once they can adopt it mentally, I think they should be able to handle themselves pretty well.
Good. So the last time these two teams would have played would have been in the Caribbean in 2019. Of course, West Indies won that series. The fast bowlers did pretty well, and some of the batsmen came through. West Indies now holding the Wisden Trophy. What, in your estimation, would be key for them to keep hold of that trophy in England?
I think batting. I think it's important that they bat and bat well, especially the first innings, or the first opportunity they get to bat. Whether they got to bat long and pose a total, a very big total. So it puts them in a situation where they're not able to lose the test match. But having said that, I also believe that with the experience that England has with the bowling unit, that itself is going to possess a challenge to our batters. So I think it's important that whenever we bat first, we try and pose a big total. Also, we got to be very cognizant of the fact that we've got a pretty good, decent bowling lineup as well. I think Kimar has been doing pretty well for the past few years, so I think he's going to fancy himself. And of course, you got Jason with his height, will play a major part. So I think as much as the condition will play in their hand, I think we also have an opportunity to utilize it once we're able to bowl it.
You mentioned the batting. That has been a concern leading up to this series. Many persons have been labeling it basically the weak link of this side heading into the series, with Bravo and Darren Bravo, that is, and Shimron Hetmeyer not there. How much of an impact do you think the absence of those players would be on West Indies batting?
I think without a doubt they'll be missed. But also got to take into consideration that this also presents opportunity for other players, and I'm sure those guys are going to be hungry. And I think when one door closes, another open. So we're going to hope that whoever gets the opportunity will be able to make use of it and make their name and make their announcement on the international cricket. So I think they're quite, like I've said when I'd worked with these guys in Antigua, they've been a pretty good bunch of guys. They were hungry to do well, and I'm sure that hasn't changed. I'm sure they're even more hungry now. Excuse me. So hopefully they'll be able to bat and bat well. I think spending time with the crease is something important. Obviously, the ball swings a lot in England. It moves around. I think being able to play the ball late, it's not like the Caribbean where you could actually go a little hard at the ball. I think in England, you got to play with a little more soft hands and try and play the ball on the eyes. So hopefully be able to adapt to that.
Spending time with the crease, that is one of the things Sir Clive Lloyd did mention leading up to this series. And he said once West Indies can get at least a 300 in any of the innings in the test matches, spend time with the crease, they could actually challenge England in the series. SARS, in 2009, against Anderson and Broad, you made your career best, 291 in Barbados. Of course, there were different conditions totally from what the players would get in England. But how it is, you had first-hand experience facing Anderson and Broad. Your message to the West Indies batsmen heading into the series, playing against these guys?
I think what they gotta understand is those guys are probably the best bowlers. Obviously, you've got not only wicket takers in terms of the amount of wickets that they have, but they've also got a lot of experience on their belt. So I think they would have to be able to try and see them off. You know what James Anderson is capable of doing. Of course, he swings the ball both ways, and he's very dangerous. And Broad possesses a different challenge with his height and so forth. But I think between the two, I found James Anderson much more difficult to play.
Right.
But hopefully those guys will be able to make those necessary adjustments and be able to adapt to the condition. But the key, like I said earlier, is to try and play the ball as late as possible. Try not to commit yourself too early onto the front foot. But there's a gentleman there that you haven't really mentioned there,
Jafar Archer.
who's probably the quickest now in the world. So I think he's probably going to be a handful as well.
How much of an impact you see him having on this series, though, Jafra?
I mean, the way he's been bowling, obviously, I think he can make a major difference. But I think the younger guys who know him, who have played against him in the Caribbean, would just probably see him as a Jafar Archer rather than seeing him as a rising superstar.
Right.
And most of our young players as well, they're pretty innocent. And I think sometimes it's good to have youth on your side. So hopefully this is one of the time.
Your experience is finally, Ramnaresh. You average mid-30s in both tests and ODIs there. You have 2 test hundreds in England. What makes England so difficult for batsmen as compared to other nations, playing in other nations?
Conditions. I think it possesses a whole different condition to what we're accustomed when they're playing in England or South Africa or Australia, one of those places. It has a lot to do with the weather because mentally you can be beaten down by the weather.
Right.
And that's one of the biggest challenges. That's why I said to you earlier, it's important the guy try and stay mentally tough throughout the different scenarios or different weather pattern they're going to experience. Hopefully, we'll be able to get good weather during the series. But if not, I think it's important that they stay mentally tough because at some point in time, or if you get rain, you can be on and off the field. We have 20 minutes breaks or half an hour to an hour breaks, and then you got to go back on. So being able to switch on and off, of course, that calls for a lot of mental strength and focus.
West Indies last won a test series in England in 1988. Since 1995, they've only had two test match victories in 21 games, I believe. You think they could turn around the fortunes in this one?
I think it's important that we remain optimistic. Obviously, most of the time when people tend to write off West Indies cricket, that's when they produce something brilliant.
Right.
So we're hoping that they'll be able to produce something brilliant, but you got to remain optimistic. I think you also got to understand that there are quite a few young guys on that tour as well. So hopefully they'll be able to make a name for themselves, and hopefully we have a couple of guys coming out there, being able to go forward with their careers.
Ramnaresh, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Avinash. Stay safe, brother.
You too.